The San Diego Padres' good vibes continue to roll as they win their first game against the Brewers in this 3-game set to start off this lovely, lovely week. Breaking down Joe Musgrove's start, a very weird defensive inning by the Milwaukee Brewers. Potentially, should Xander Bogaerts have his spot in the lineup moved? All that and much more. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Tuesday, April 16th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You may be familiar with my baseball-related work over at Just Baseball, where I write about not just the Padres, but all of baseball in general in very goofy ways. And speaking of goofy ways, I also host a podcast called Baseball vs. the World, which you should go check out. For sure. You can also check me out on Twitter at Javipeno, best handle in the game at JAVIIPENO. And let me tell you, today's episode, folks, it's going to be fun because the Padres won. It's always fun to do an episode when the Padres win this first game of 3 against the Brewers in Milwaukee. And it's kind of a weird one. Like, in all honesty, it's a really weird one. One, because I don't think Joe Musgrove necessarily pitched amazing, but it was still cool to see him not, explode or anything like that. And the Padres won by a score of 7-3, yet it didn't feel like it was an offensive slugfest or anything like that. So lots to get into, as well as the Padres making a little bit of a transaction. The stove was lit just a tiny bit yesterday. So shouts to them. And we're going to talk about that, guys. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side. And it is a great time for this competitive side to be a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play Store. Today's episode, guys, first, we're going to start with the pitching. And I do want to start with the pitching for both teams, actually. I wanted to talk about that really quickly because our old buddy Joe Ross, who you might remember from the Trey Turner trade, one of the guys that was sent over. But firstly, Joe Musgrove in this game, 6 innings, 3 earned runs on 7 hits, 4 walks against just 3 strikeouts. So here's what I'll say. He didn't generate a whole lot of whiffs on his pitches. His curveball wasn't necessarily, going off in this game. He got no whiffs on the 9 swings that he elicited 9 swings. Not the most, he wasn't really fooling the Brewers hitters. Now, I will say the Brewers are an annoying team, just because they have all these players that for some reason are really good at either drawing walks or just hitting home runs. And then when it comes to the most important games, they will never do that. But in the regular season, they are a team that I definitely fear. Let's just be real. And I don't think that this is a team that the Padres have struggled against more than others, and they are a pretty decent team, even though they're clearly probably in a rebuild process. I think this hot start by them is mostly, I don't want to say fluky, but I think it's just a little bit of a mirage, and I think that they're gonna slowly get worse, and I think that they're gonna end up selling at the deadline. But in this game, Musgrove was okay. I will say the good thing about him is I like that his last couple starts, he's basically only had 1 inning that wasn't great. Last week, I mentioned he had the 5th most whiffs on his pitches of any starting pitcher that day, but then he just had that bad inning where he just blew up and allowed a lot of walks, and then I believe it was Kulak who came into the game and then allowed a home run or a bases clearing, whatever it was, in Musgrove's last start. That kind of made the start look a little bit worse than it was. Last time he gave up 4 runs and 4 innings. But even still, I still would like to see a little bit more from him. I think he's slowly finding a groove. But it's taking some time, and the strikeouts aren't fully there. And more importantly, the walks have been there. 4 walks in this game against the Brewers. So, and I don't think it's necessarily a control thing. Again, he's mostly just had 1 bad inning over his past couple starts that seemed to, really hurt him. And aside from the Cardinals start, although the Cardinals don't seem to be a good team this year so far. We'll have to see how that plays out. But the big hit that he gives up this game is the home run to one Sir. Is it Jackson Chourio? Yes, it was Jackson Chourio, who is relevant, I think, for Padres fans in a lot of ways because he is the other potential National League Rookie of the Year candidate. For those who don't know, he's a top 5-ish level prospect in baseball, considered by many, and they actually extended him before the season started, which is why everyone's really high on him. They're wow, they're already committing to this kid, and he hasn't played a major league game yet. Should Jackson Merrill get extended? That's a question I think for another day. That's a question I think could be for 2 segments. on this podcast. I really do. So we're going to save that for another day. But Churio hits that home run in the bottom of second. And that's basically it. Like, Musgrove kind of cruises the rest of the way, even if he works through a couple counts, maybe some pitches that I think should have been called strikes. I am wondering, it is fair to wonder, is this Luis Campusano thing becoming a problem with the lack of any good framing, the lack of throwing out runners, the lack of blocks behind the plate, and all that stuff? I do think it could become a problem. The only thing I will say is this is better than Austin Nola, and I think that it's really important to view that the Campusano through that guise. He actually does get an RBI in this game. Granted, it's in the top of the fifth inning, and we're going to talk about that inning in just a minute, but maybe the outfielder should have come in faster on that, so he did get a little bit fortunate there. But nonetheless, fine. It's fine from Joe Musgrove. I think his next start will probably come against who they play next, Toronto. So it might come against Toronto on Sunday. We'll have to see how that pans out. And that's a interesting team to face, so I hope that he gets back on track. We need a couple good starts in a row from Musgrove. He hasn't been disastrous. There's nothing in his repertoire that freaks me out. There's no decrease in velocity. I don't see, at least from what I'm looking at, anything changing too much in terms of his spin rates or his horizontal and vertical breaks. I'm not really seeing that. But what I do like is that overall, it seems like it's just been one bad inning for him. And speaking of one bad inning, woo doctor, was there one bad inning in this game? And it's, yes, the Padres won 7-3, but it really doesn't feel like that. In fact, the Padres had a really horrendous display of situational hitting in this game, and just this game specifically. Don't get me wrong, I'll take it, obviously, but they kind of basically get a lot of their hits on one of the worst innings, I think, that we've seen by a team that has played the Padres this year. Just one individual inning. I just think that it was kind of a mess all the way around. And we're going to talk about that, guys, for sure. And we're going to start it now, I think. We're going to start it now. I don't know why I thought I was 8 minutes into the podcast, but I do want to say really quickly, when it comes to, what's his face? Jurickson Profar does go 1 for 5 in this game. He looks sharp, guys. He looks sharp. I actually posed this question to the audience before we go to break. Do you think that there might be something happening here? I don't think so. It's very rare for a player to get this good late in their career. The only thing that's in Profar's favor is that he is still pretty young. I mean, he's been in the league for so long. For those who don't remember, really highly touted prospect coming out of college and then AAA and all that. It just kind of got beat up with a bunch of injuries. But he is, if I'm not mistaken, 31. It wouldn't be the craziest thing I've ever seen. But what I am starting to believe, not that he's transformed, but I am starting to believe that we might at least be able to get the season that he had in 2022. When he's worth around 2 wins above replacement. He played okay defense, not horrible, not libelous the way he was last year with Colorado. Had some outfield assists and just put together really good at-bats, and then, of course, the vibe. So I think that's something in play. I know he doesn't have a big game tonight, but even still, I'm keeping an eye on that. We're going to talk about the offense, though, in just a second, guys, in that very, very weird inning that we have to just break down. Just totally. I don't know what happened there by the Brewers, a team that's usually quite good defensively. But before we do that, folks, I want to take a second to talk to you about our good friends over at Monopoly. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody knows the Monopoly game. Come on, what are you talking about? You know how Monopoly goes. It's fantastic. And you might have heard, it's in the news because that Margot Robbie movie that got announced. But look, whether you're a player or a fan, it is always tough for you to contain that competitive edge. Make sure you don't look like a lunatic in front of your friends. Well, guess what? I'm not necessarily saying you should stop that, because with Monopoly Go, you can keep the competition going if you are a super competitive person. Occasionally I am when it comes to games that I think I'm good at. And Monopoly, every now and then, your boy's got a little bit of spice up in the Monopoly board. What can I say? It's a great game. It's basically a twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up all these different cities that bring you big money. You can rob your friends of all the riches that they have. You can do all the classic stuff from regular Monopoly. They've got the ghost sign is there and all that stuff, and the jail and everything, and the railroads, and you can be that tycoon that you were when you were younger, or frankly, still. I mean, it's still kind of a consistent game. It's kind of part of pop culture and everything, and this is really cool. It's a faster version of it. all these dynamic new boards. There's even, you can smash their landmarks with like a giant wrecking ball. It looks sick. That's disrespectful as heck, but guess what? Monopoly Go allows it. I very, very much like it. So go check it out, guys, now in the App Store or Google Play Store. Maybe you'll even pass by me at some point. But don't destroy my stuff. Don't be mean now, folks. Don't be mean. Go check that out. Monopoly Go on the App Store or Google Play Store. But we're not done, folks. We're not done. Not just yet. No. I got to talk to you about, speaking of buying things, Gametime, folks. And let me tell you, I used Gametime 2 weeks ago to get some tickets for a game, and they help you out big time over at Gametime. And what I like, no pun intended there. Here's the thing. One thing about sports these days, especially, depending on what the game is, depending on the league it is that, sometimes you get tickets last second, and it's really annoying that you're like, oh man, I don't want to get these tickets to a Lakers game. Maybe LeBron's just going to sit for whatever reason. Well, don't worry, because they give you all sorts of deals. You can change it at the last second. They've got flash deals over at Gametime. Zone deals, so like a certain part of the stadium, they've got that stuff. You can view the seats from the venue in the app. It's really great. Lowest price is guaranteed. They've got event cancellation protection. If you find a seat, folks, they will credit you 110% of the difference if you find like a better seat in that area. It's really, really cool. And another nice little thing, it's not just sports. It's not just baseball or sports. They've also got theater. They've got comedy. They've got concerts. They got you covered, man. Gametime is no joke, folks. It is no joke whatsoever. And because you're listening to this podcast, guys, you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets and get yourself a nice little deal. Create an account and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the app. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed with Gametime. And just like that, we are back, folks, here on the Locked On Padres podcast. Hopefully you enjoy the show. Please give us 5 stars wherever the heck you can review podcasts these days, or follow the show on Twitter as well at @LO_Padres, and follow me on Twitter at Jalapeno. Let's break down that 5th inning that the Padres have. And look, here's the thing. For the Brewers, Joe Ross, our old buddy, he goes 4 2/3, giving up 6 earned runs, 7 runs total on 9 hits, 2 walks, and 4 Ks. It's a misleading stat line. He actually had been pretty okay, by the way, for the Brewers to start the year. Not amazing. I actually think he's one of those guys that, like, if he's your 5th starter, it's actually not that bad. You could do worse than Joe Ross. It's kind of not his fault, though. We have, like, 4 errors in this inning. We have a catcher's interference from William Contreras, and then we have a ball that gets past him, and it wasn't like a wild pitch or anything. It bounces right off his glove, allowing the runners to advance. And then we have the catcher's interference, the bounce off the glove. We have a pitching violation that the ump actually warned him about beforehand that allows Ha-Seong to take first base. And then Willy Adames fails to turn the double play after he gets a little bit fancy trying to turn 2 with the behind the back thing. And that's kind of what happens here. Now, don't get me wrong, the Padres did have some good hits here. To start things off, Luis Campusano got a single, same thing for Tyler Wade, and same thing for Xander Bogaerts. But then it was just weirdness after that, right? Then it was just weirdness. You get Tatis a ground out, and it wasn't the only time, by the way. To start the scoring in the top of the 5th, Ha-Seong also hit into a fielder's choice, and that's how the first run came across, which was a little bit annoying. But then Tyler Wade scores on a pass ball. Jay Cronenworth gets there on the catcher's interference, like I said. Machado gets the straight-up RBI. He's one of the only ones that gets straight-up RBI in this one, or in this inning. And then Profar strikes out. Ha-Seong gets that walk. Jackson Merrill gets a single, and then Luis Campusano gets a single. Although I will say that the single from Campusano, maybe the outfielder, the left fielder, kind of timed his jump wrong on that one. And then the Jackson Merrill hit, I believe it was the Jackson Merrill hit, was a little bit fluky. Or no, the Machado hit was a little bit fluky. Like, reach down low, pop the ball into the air. I'm optimistic that Machado's turning the corner. I am. I've been more just frustrated with him. You know what I mean? It's just a little bit annoying that ever since he got paid, he's just been really struggling. And don't get me wrong, I know it's an injury thing. And maybe this is one of those things that he's going to get back being better. This, like, when he's ready to take the field, maybe that will coincide with his bat getting better. But now all of a sudden he's hitting 254 on the season, 2 for 5 in this one with an RBI and 2 strikeouts. But even still, I like that we're seeing it from him. And I wasn't as worried about him. I was more disappointed in him, but I'm not worried. The one that I am worried about is Xander Bogaerts, who goes 1 for 5 in this one. I am wondering, and I want to ask you guys this. Should the Padres put Kim in the first spot to lead off, or should they put Merrill, and then they should put Xander Bogaerts down? Because in my opinion, there does come a point, and when you look at all the data on Xander Bogaerts, and I've discussed this before, and don't get me wrong, he does get like one bloop hit in this one, which is cute, I guess, but it was a blooper type of hit. He's just not hitting the ball hard at all. And it's worse than last year, and there's no injury, at least new injury to speak of. And also, he showed a lot of good promise last year in the second half. 138 WRC plus in the second half. He was doing better. But so far this year, the big thing with him is he's been able to draw walks. He's not striking out. He's not whiffing, and he's not chasing. But the fact that this hard hit rate is going down again from last year, where he was in the, let's see here, 18th percentile in hard hit rate, and this year so far he's in now the 9th percentile, that concerns me. Don't get me wrong, he has had some things that are better. He's barreled a couple more balls, but even still, I think he's going to be better, don't get me wrong. But him, I'm more concerned about, because when you've given a guy an 11-year contract and the hard hit rate goes down again that first year, and then it goes down again and there's no injury to speak of, I am worried about that. But I think for now, unless the walk rate goes down, I think I'm okay with him batting first. But it's something to point out there, because Jackson Merrill has also been good, and he actually gets hits, and he's able to do that. And Ha-Seong Kim last year, besides Ryan McMahon, actually saw the most pitches per plate appearance of any batter, and he increased his walk rate, and he's also slowly starting to get his bat going. So that's I pose that question to you folks, the listeners and viewers, what you think they should do. But basically, that's the game. That one inning for the Padres, pretty much. And Luis Campusano gets the single, which is always great. I will use that in my propaganda. 2 for hits for him in this game and an RBI. The only thing with him is that he needs to be more patient. He's not walking. And yes, he's not striking out. That's true. He's making some good contact. That I do like. But especially from a catcher, like, I just appreciate that we have a catcher that's going to put the ball in play. You know what I mean? That means a lot. It really does. But you know, some of the data on him, not great. Very Bogaerts-esque. And the worst thing, though, is the defense. We'll have to see what they do. I'm very, very concerned about Campusano's defense. I think that the bat is going to be plus. I believe right now, if I'm not mistaken, he has a positive WRC plus. Granted, it could, you know, after one bad game, that thing goes down. On the year, he's got a 79 WRC plus, so he has been cold lately. I think that he's going to be a guy with like a 110. I really do. I think that he's going to be that guy potentially, but the walk rate, man, the walk rate is concerning, and it was concerning last year where he only walked 4%, but now it's 1.7%, so he's got to get better. So 263 average and all that, but not so great from Campusano, but more importantly is the defense. And folks, not thrilled with what we're seeing so far there, but other than that, just okay game. Cronenworth scores 2 runs in this game, has a walk. Tatis basically doesn't do anything in this game, but he does draw a walk. Again, not a big offensive game despite all the stats. Jackson Merrill, though, does have 2 RBIs, 3 for 5 in this one. He also steals a base. Love to see that. Tyler Wade actually had a single, which I mentioned earlier, so that was nice. But yeah, not much to say on this end when it comes to the Padres scoring. Just one of those games that frankly feels like the type of game the Padres tended to lose, right? They were the ones that said, not necessarily errors, because the Padres were a great pitching and defensive team, especially last year, but just finding some weird nonsense to happen, like that 5th inning in this game, that tended to happen for the Padres last year. So this last week has been really encouraging, both on vibes and results and data. So really exciting stuff, and I hope that they continue it. And this is a Brewers team that, in my opinion, their record does not reflect how good they are. I think that that's going to get worse. I think they've been like one of the best teams in baseball with runners in scoring position, and I don't think that's going to keep up. I don't think their lineup's bad, don't get me wrong, but just a lot of guys that you'd like to have on your team, but not necessarily any stars. Very, very Giants-esque. You know, San Francisco Giants, I mean. So we'll see how that pans out. But folks, we're not done yet. We're going to talk a little bit more about a bunch of stuff, including the signing of Donovan Solano. Donnie Barrels, he's been called before. It's true. That's true. It's his name. That's true. But before we do that, guys, I want to take a quick second to talk about our friends over at LinkedIn, folks. I think it's LinkedIn. Let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, it is LinkedIn. Heck of a way to start off an ad read, guys. But in all seriousness, what I like about LinkedIn is that they're always kind of there for you. And let me tell you, selling is tougher than ever. And that's why I want to tell you about LinkedIn Sales Navigator, folks. Because let me tell you, like I said, it's very hard to find stuff. It is a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage high-value customers, drive higher revenue, and increase sales performances. It helps you target the right buyers, surface key signals such as jobs or like which accounts to prioritize, I guess, and shows you hidden allies so you can find those buyers that are most likely to convert. Fueled by LinkedIn's 1 billion member, 1 billion, that's right, 1 billion member platform, Sales Navigator gives you the most up-to-date first-party data, enabling you to unlock conversations with the people that mattered. Right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day free trial. 60 days, 2 months. Oh yeah, 2 months free trial at linkedin.com/locked-on, folks. That is linkedin.com/locked-on for a 60-day free trial of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar today. Remember, linkedin.com/locked-on and get started. And just like that, we are back in the waning moments of the Locked On Padres podcast. Hope you're all doing well on this lovely, fine Tuesday. I haven't checked the weather by the time I'm recording this, but I hope wherever it is that it's good weather. You know why? Because it's always a good weather in a lot of ways. You know, it's always just good to be at. All right, enough. But no, seriously, the last thing I have to say about this game really is a couple of nice defensive plays that I want to throw out there. One from Tatis that comes in this game. Ha-Seong Kim actually has some good hustle in this one as well. But Tatis, with his first kind of outfield major gun down of the year, love seeing that. And again, he's the other one. Like, I actually haven't looked at like his savant, Tatis. He's like one of those real eye test guys for me this year where I'm like, okay, yeah, he's back. And he hasn't had as many like crazy defensive moments this year just because I think that also runners are kind of aware that like you can't run on this guy, right? Like he threw out so many runners last year. Yeah, he's 0 outs above average right now. Like that'll get better, don't get me wrong. But that's been part of it. And he also, those errors that he made early on in the season, especially the one that just straight up he dropped, like from it bounced off his glove, that was weird. But I think he's gonna get better. I don't see him becoming. You don't go from platinum glove to being a negative defender. At least usually you don't, and that would be very odd and strange. But does throw out a runner here trying to get to third base. So shouts to that fool who ran on him. That's one thing that Tatis has always had, is it is an arm. I believe it was let's see here. Who was it that he threw out? I'm trying to find out who it was. It wasn't Churio. Who the heck was it? Who did he throw out? Do you guys know? Because I can't get it from the scoreboard thing. Was it Rhys Hoskins? I don't know. But anyway, whoever it was, they're a fool for running on Tatis. So shouts to that defensive play he made. Things got a little bit scary at the end of this game with Kolek having to dodge the bat after the bat broke in the middle. I haven't seen something like that in a while. That was really weird. Like he genuinely had to dodge it. Jackson Merrill showed a little bit of that power for a second. It was a line out, unfortunately, but even still, he got the bat to the ball. I think that it was just not necessarily the best pitch to take, but I think that that's the big thing with Merrill is number one, getting better at pitch recognition, and then can he tap into some of that power, right? He hit it 100.1 miles per hour off the bat. Didn't have a high expected batting average, and it wasn't going to be a home run anywhere. But it was close. I think that he had it. He had the pitch. I think he knew what he was doing. I would expect that to come later on because one thing is he does chase, and sometimes he chases and hits those as for singles or fouls them off and then works the count and whatnot. But hasn't tapped into power just yet. And remember, later this week, going to be talking with my buddy Aram Layton of Just Baseball about Jackson Merrill, what he's seen so far, and talk some Padres prospects. So look forward to that. Last thing that we got to talk about really quickly is Donovan Solano. Folks, signed by the Padres. Donnie Barrels is the nickname that he goes by. Last season, he was okay. He was actually okay. So shouts to Donnie Barrels last year. Had a slash line of 282, 369, 391, and had a 116 WRC plus. He was good for 1.2 F4. He's not a very good defender. And he doesn't hit for any power. But I think that this could be a similar signing along the lines of Brad Miller, where they're just trying to get some depth, following any injury, or maybe Machado takes a little bit longer to get back to third base. Solano is not usually a third baseman. He's been mostly a second baseman for most of his career, although he did play a little bit of first. I don't think it'll be like a crazy transition for him, anything like that. But in terms of recently, second base is where he has more experience. But even still, he did play 117 innings last year at third base. Wasn't overly impressive or anything like that. But I do think that, look, if the team isn't going to call up Grant Pauly, then, I think that you could do worse than this. One thing I do like about him is he is good against righties and lefties. That's really good. And again, the Padres do need just a little bit more offense, I think, from that position. They are 5th in total position F4 right now in Major League Baseball, which is awesome. Obviously, the Padres have been playing very, very well. And also keep in note that is from some of their star players not performing so well. Machado, Bogarts, Kim, guys along that line, right? So I think that that's going to keep, at least to an extent. I don't think they're going to have necessarily a top 5 lineup in that regard, but really positive stuff there. However, they are 15th in F4 at third base. In terms of just offense, they're 17th in WRC+, which is actually, I got to give him credit, not nearly as bad as you would think. Now, I think part of that is because it's inflated. I mean, every stat is inflated, in my opinion, at this point. But that might be inflated because Eggy Rosario has had, the craziest career splits of, any player right now. So maybe his splits against, the lefties that he has hit against decently well when he hit he's hit a couple home runs. Maybe that's inflating some of the numbers at third base. I would be curious to see what the numbers would look like if he took out Eggy Rosario, but all in all, yeah, they need a little bit of a boost there. But more importantly, in my opinion, is because if Machado comes back, who becomes the DH, right? In my opinion, it might be like a tryout situation. I'm really curious to see how that pans out. I think that Eggy Rosario or Graham Pauly should be playing. I stand by the Graham Pauly thing. I think that it's really weird. I don't know why they did that. I just don't get it. I don't get it whatsoever, and I think it's really frustrating. It is the only thing that I kind of complain about with the Padres this year in a major way, in terms of roster building, in terms of lineup decisions. I just don't understand it. Paulie's been good in the minors against righties and lefties. Tyler Wade has barely ever been good before. And then Eggy Rosario, at the minimum, is just very good against lefties. And frankly, the splits are so off, try him out against righties every now and then. Just give him more than one day at a time is what I would like from the Padres. So hopefully they do that more. Hopefully you get some more playing time. I will say, without, what's-his-face? Without Graham Pauly, he has been getting a little bit more playing time. And Eggy Rosario has actually hit a little bit. In this game, he actually pinch hit, and he got one hit, and it was a double. So I'm just saying, give him a second. Give him more than 3 minutes to warm up. I'd really appreciate that. But Solano just kind of hits. You know what I mean? He's kind of been a very consistent offensive player. He is going to be 36, so it's possible that it could have just been gone, and maybe there's a reason no team assigned him. But 116 WRC plus last year, 100 the year before, 105, 125, 118. That's dating all the way back to 2016 before he wasn't, getting much regular playing time with the Yankees. But with the Giants, he kind of showed that he can be a decent batter, kind of that spark plug batter off the bench that you bat every now and then. And hey, I wouldn't mind if it was Donovan Solano and then Eggy Rosario against lefties. I think that'd be kind of cool. So hopefully the Padres are just testing out some things, mixing and matching some possibilities, dare I say. We'll just have to see how it all plays out, though. We'll just have to see. We will have to see. And shouts to you Dodgers fans that really attacked my tweet the other day about, what's-his-face, the Profile Will Smith thing. Shouts to y'all. Love you very much. But with that all being said, everybody, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember, we're going to be talking about Jackson Merrill and a bunch of prospects this week with Arm Late, and that'll be a lot of fun. Still going to do the series recaps and probably some other ideas that I have in my notes section that I don't want to pull up right now because for some reason my computer's glitching out and it isn't letting me pull up my notes app. But plenty of ideas to talk about. Maybe we'll do a crossover in time for the Blue Jays series. Really good stuff for the show. And the team looks good, man. The team looks good. I know I ranted last week and I thought that it was, the more I think about it, I'm cringing at myself. I shouldn't have lost it that much, but it really was a frustrating weekend. That being said, Padres are looking good and you should be excited. And all you people that were yelling at me saying, you idiots, I don't care if they were historically bad in the clutch. They're going to be bad again. All of you could just leave me alone, okay? it was a good point to make. Clutch doesn't usually translate year to year. But until next time, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful, my Fire Faithful homies. Take care.